Andrew Wilson fully explodes on Matt Walsh in a brutal rant that the left viewers shot. Now, Andrew Wilson dismantles Walsh's arguments with the fiery passion and sharp logic. Expect nonstop rant, rapid fire rebuttals, and even raw emotion as Andrew Wilson calls out Matt Walsh on the red pill ideology, masculinity, and even morality. From start to finish, the explosive rant overflows with bold claims about Matt Walsh's views, sparking reaction and outrage online. So here we are with Andrew Wilson discussing his issues with Matt Walsh and stuff, with his hypocrisy as well as double standards, okay? And watch how Andrew Wilson actually tears into him. So let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Here we go.
We've got the argument going on here between the tradcons and between the red pillars. So the tradcons have come back out and Matt Walsh presents his arguments here. So I'm interested to see your take on this.
Which Andrew Tate describes and promotes, where men have children
I got into
by many different women.
kerfluffle with him on Twitter, by the way, about this.
When was this?
This was yesterday. We were arguing back and forth, me and Matt Walsh.
All right.
Where I told him essentially, like, stop being a wuss about this and just directly confront these guys. Like, I'm so sick of hearing the polygyny debate, and it's been at the undercurrent of it, and it's time for a few of us to just directly debate and confront those ideologies so that we can just show people how stupid they are. As a commenter rightly pointed out, we Ender's Game it, right? We just destroy it so badly that people don't bring it back up for a while.
Right. Okay. Well, would you be willing to, you'd obviously be willing to do the debate. Do you think that Matt Walsh would be willing to do this debate?
I don't. And what's funny is, like, I'd be willing even to do it on Matt Walsh's side against Myron and Andrew Tate, and I think we would win. But I don't think that he would do it.
Well, he's not a debater, Matt Walsh. He struggles in debates a lot.
He doesn't need to be. I'm a good debater. I can carry it with him.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, though. If you were to prep him before it on the various different points, then I think it would be a strong showing.
I agree. We'd be ready to go. Yep.
Has lots of historical precedent. It does. This is the way that primitive societies have operated for thousands of years. And today, this strategy, if we can call it that, is very popular in certain communities in this country.
It is very popular. I will say that much. And just from me sort of on my travels and everything, I meet obviously a lot of young guys, and these conversations tend to come up a lot. And I have met a lot of young guys recently who have been saying this. I'm not going to get married. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have multiple wives. I'm going to have multiple wives in different countries, these sorts of things. It is becoming very popular because
I'm going to let you in on a secret.
Yep.
Because you're a young guy, right? This shit was popular when I was young too.
Yeah.
And it was popular when Gen X was young too. And the thing is that what happens is this, right, Jake? You go and you sow all those wild oats, and then by the time you hit your 30s, especially your mid-30s, you start to go, wait a second, I don't have any purpose whatsoever in life. And then you end up completely reforming. The idea is that this idea that this is just now resurgently popular, it goes in waves. Just like when I was younger. You think that you think when I was a kid, there wasn't people playing the field, weren't advocating for polygyny, weren't living they called it the rock star lifestyle then, right? We're going to have drugs and lots of sex and this and that. You know what I mean? That's a rock star lifestyle. And again, only available to very few people, right? And all of those rock stars all reformed. It's so funny, isn't it? After they're all done with their 90s rock star lifestyle, they all became Christians, right? They're all singing Christian music and hymns and shit like that. They all reformed their asses real quick when they figured out, wait a second, this is a purposeless life.
It's interesting because it reminds me of a conversation that we had when I was in Santa Barbara last time. And I said, Andrew, you know, I'm getting into that stage of my life. I'm nearly 30 now. What should I be looking for in terms of marriage? I want to be able to settle down at some point. And I was expecting you to give me the laundry list, but instead you said to me, oh, you're not ready. And I was like, well, screw you, dude. Who are you to tell me I'm not ready? But now I kind of understand what you mean by that, in the sense that there's a part of you that has to die. And I think that a lot of young guys will interpret this as some sort of a death of the soul, death of the spirit, end of the masculine lifestyle. But there is sort of a part of you that has to die in a healthy way, I guess.
Well, it's the materialist side. Once you realize that you can have everything you want, you realize that you don't really want anything. And so the thing is, it's so funny about that is think about a material thing that you've wanted more than anything. You just always wanted it. And then the day finally comes where you get it. you lose interest in it really quickly. That's just how it is. Can you think of anything that you really wanted that you got it and you're still as interested in it today as you were when you got it?
Well, the worst part is you're interested in it for 5 minutes, if that,
Mhm.
when you get it, and you're like, oh, fuck, that's a thing.
Guess what, though? That's not the case with a good wife, is it?
No.
You don't just lose interest, do you? They're just as important the day you get them as the day you lose them. So this is the important distinction between the material pursuit and the idea that we can just take spiritualism completely out of the human experience and pretend it doesn't exist and pretend that purpose is only material, because it's not.
Yeah. Well, what did you mean when you said you're not ready? Was it not ready in the sense that the priorities aren't there, the roots aren't there, that sort of thing? What does a guy need to do to be ready?
They have to kill off the materialist aspect of themselves. They have to realize that the things which are important to them don't actually exist in the world.
Well, that seems something that a lot of men are actually doing nowadays and stuff, or at least the good ones and stuff that has already done that. But the problem is they're always running into the wrong women. Okay. And the simple fact of the matter is that, whenever, a man meets a woman that he thinks is a good woman, only to find out that, she's not really a good woman, especially for him and stuff. Well, he actually finds out the hard way later on and stuff, to the point where he regrets getting with her in the first place. Okay. But at the same time, Matt Walsh, Andrew Wilson is correct and stuff by saying that, if you're not ready for marriage, trust me, there's things you have to put off and stuff in order to get ready for it.
You realize that you don't value very much. That's why the older you get, the more you see us old guys saying shit like, I don't care, I don't give a shit, I don't care. You know what I mean? Don't care, don't care, don't care. You'll hear this commonly. The older I get, the less I care about things. That's not true. It's just the older you get, the more you care about things that matter, and the less you care about everything else, which almost nothing matters. Once you realize that, then you're ready.
And you can always spot those communities because they're the ones that are the most dysfunctional, the filthiest, most destitute, and crime-ridden places in the country. Show me the murder rate and the average yearly income in any neighborhood, and I will tell you whether most of the children in that neighborhood have a father in the home or not. And I will never be wrong. Andrew Tate talks about this kind of lifestyle as though it's natural. In a post on Sunday, he made that claim explicitly. He said, quote, monogamy isn't natural for men. We are not monkeys or lizards or sharks. We are human beings. And my controversial contention is that we should act like it.
Well, and by the way, there's
monogamy
something here which reinforces Matt that he's not bringing up. Is that if it's the case you're coming from a red pill perspective, non-religious, then you're adapting evolutionary psychology, which means the key point of this is what? Evolution, right, Jake? So how can you ever say that if it's the case that half the world practices monogamy, that men did not evolve to practice monogamy? Yeah. Of course they did. That would be part of the evolutionary process. So to say that that's not natural would actually be stupid. That makes no sense, right? It would absolutely have to be part of the natural world that we evolved towards monogamy, or we wouldn't engage in it.
Yeah, and if the idea is to reproduce and survive as well, we have to reproduce our society, and what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, exactly. And what's the best way for it to thrive?
Yeah.
Well,
even better,
single moms,
supernatural. Man and wife become one at the altar. They are bound together by the vow they made before God. This is above our base instincts. And so is composing a symphony or sculpting the statue of David out of a massive hunk of marble. These things are achieved, just like any great thing is achieved, by rejecting temptation, subordinating our base desires, embracing some measure of hardship for the sake of something far greater than whatever momentary pleasure we can experience by giving into them. And there is nothing in this world more manly, more masculine than that. In fact, I would say this is the very definition.
So this is where he gets it
masculinity.
wrong. At least in my opinion, this is where he gets it wrong. So he's talking about the hierarchy of duties in men, right? However, there's no obligation for men to fulfill this higher duty of moving themselves away from base instincts and moving themselves into the maturation of assisting women at their expense, if women are not also moving towards the same virtues and duty. So if it's the case that one whole half of society is not encompassing those same virtues, what obligation do you have to do so? And this is the question that Matt will stumble on over and over and over again, and most people on my side will as well.
Right. So what's the answer then? Because I think that he does make a good point that in terms of what is manly and masculine, being if you're materialist and everything that you do constantly goes inwards, then it sort of almost eats away at you. But if you are taking your masculine virtues and if you're expressing them outwards and towards family and community and these sorts of things, then I think that's a much more masculine thing because it sort of expands endlessly.
Yeah, but in the encompassment of that masculinity, does that mean that you give your resources to people who are undeserving of them?
Sometimes undeserving is probably the key word there. Yeah. People
So
in need, maybe, but undeserving is the key word, probably not. No.
yeah,
Now, Andrew did make a great point, actually. And this is the same thing I've been thinking about. I'm pretty sure a lot of you all out there thought about as well. But when it comes to, like, as I call Daily Wire, people like Matt Walsh and stuff, or anybody out there who also supports the establishment, who teaches men to go ahead and find a good woman, marry her, have a family and stuff, and live a happy life and stuff. What about the women out there who refuse to go ahead and be submissive, or in other words, they won't do wifey duties and stuff without the ring on their finger and stuff? They won't teach them that, to find a woman, they won't teach them how to find a woman who shows them that they can be your wife and stuff. And they won't teach you how to live as if you're a husband and everything. And I'm not talking about, cohabitation before marriage. No, I'm talking about, like, as in showing her that you can be a husband, as well as being able to find a woman who is able to show you that she is your wife. Okay. So basically, it's like, people like Matt Walsh are often contradictory of themselves and stuff. And that's why men tend to go ahead and not listen to them. And that's also why they have a particular problem with the red pill movement, because they think that, they're not teaching this, that, and they're just telling them that, go have more than one wife and stuff. I mean, he's just basically going by one example of one person and stuff, rather than listening to other voices themselves and stuff, which he'll find that they agree with him. But at the same time, it's a lot more that they're explaining that people like him should be explaining to younger men and stuff who are still single.
but who determines that people in need deserve it? You, the person who has the resources, gets to make that determination, right?
Yeah.
In other words, you don't have, Jake, a duty to give to people who are in need, do you?
Well, as a Christian, you have some sort of a duty to tithe, right?
Sure, but isn't that supposed to be used responsibly towards people you think deserve to have that coming towards them, or in some way you're dispensing the charity towards a person because you think that they can do good with it? You wouldn't dispense charity to somebody you thought was going to do bad with it, right? Like, you're not going to give a bum $20 to go buy booze, are you?
No.
No.
Yeah.
So you
but
don't.
I think
So
there
you
is a
don't.
duty there. There is
Yeah.
a duty there, though.
Yeah, maybe, but
Yeah.
who gets to determine when it's fulfilled?
You do. Yeah.
Yeah, you do, right? So that's the case that the red pill is making here. Who gets to make the determination as to which women are deserving of these characteristics and virtues and are deserving of the resources? It's not the women that get to determine that. It's us who gets to determine that. And I think that is one of the key parts that's been missing from the Christian ethics side.
So, but what is actually the counter argument here? What should Matt Walsh say in regards to this? So he's saying that it's the most
To take
masculine thing
over.
that
What do you mean?
Yeah,
The
okay.
same thing we've always been needing to do. You take the it over. You tell Christians it's perfectly acceptable to boycott. It's perfectly acceptable for you to discriminate against people who don't share your values. Nepotism's totally acceptable. The fact that you can flood the polls and get people with your values in office, and they're going to be discriminatory towards those who don't have your values, is totally fine. That's the answer. Fuck 'em. The answer is to take that shit over. And then you institute your force of will the same way the opposition has been, for the good of everybody. This whole
Nice.
black pill, we're just going to give the fuck up. F that. Yeah, you're rolling over for shit. Take that shit over. You take it over.
I feel like running through a wall right now.
Hell yeah.
Can you do the harder thing for the sake of the greater good? If you're going to impart one thing to your sons and your daughters as a father, it should be this: teaching them how to do the harder thing for the greater good. And if you can't, or if you won't, then you aren't manly.
See, I disagree with that
And
too.
no matter how much.
See, I agree that you should teach people, especially men, that they often will have to embody a harder thing in life for greater virtue. That's not with dispute. But with wisdom, you find something out, right? Is that half the time you don't have to engage at all. Half the time you don't even have to insert to watch it fall. Right. And that's the easiest path, in fact, in many cases. So what I would say is this: you want to impart the greatest virtue in a boy, right? The greatest virtue to teach him is wisdom. That's the greatest pathway to virtue, is wisdom, is knowing when not to act. It's just as important as knowing when. So there's something maybe your fighting instructor told you at some point, Jake. Knowing when not to fight is just as important as knowing how.
Well, that's definitely spot on. I mean, what wisdom is people like Matt Walsh sharing with younger men and everything, rather than just telling them to what they should do and everything? Is he telling them to be selfless and everything, or to remember that for a husband to love his wife and stuff the same way that Christ loved his church and was willing to die for it? I mean, that's basically what Paul. That's definitely what Paul said in the scriptures and stuff. And that's something that people like Matt Walsh won't even dive deep into and stuff. But I'm afraid that that's where like a lot of men or younger men and stuff, seeing a lot of these women out here in their 20s and stuff, going ahead, sleeping around and stuff. They're able to pick who they can open their legs to, but they can't find a man who will bend their knee down to them to ask them to marry them. I mean, that's really interesting right there, because the simple fact of the matter is that's the very thing that a lot of these guys don't want to waste their time with and stuff, where they find a woman, marry her, not happy, and then she divorces him and he loses everything. Okay. And it's like, a lot of men don't want to take their risks and stuff. So that's what people like Andrew Wilson are just saying, because at this point, a lot of men out there have chosen to go ahead and stay single and not marry a woman, or they go ahead and find a woman that's in the church and stuff. Well, they're still careful with that, because there's some women who are in the church who are still, filled with wickedness and as well as not acting godly, or they also go overseas to an international country to go ahead and find themselves a wife and stuff, perhaps even move there. In other words, becoming a passport bro. But other than that, it's like Andrew Wilson is definitely exposing the logic of what Matt is saying and stuff, and it's just tearing it down with more logic.
That's the art of war, Sun Tzu. You win the battle without firing a gun, or without
firing a shot.
Yeah.
Much money you have or how much you can bench press. Doesn't matter. Now, Tate says that men will be men, and yes, that's true, but will they be good men? Will they be men of virtue and fidelity and discipline? They can be if they pursue the higher thing. In a similar way, I might say that many men will father children. That's easy to do. But will they be fathers?
But you notice that baked into this, he's not telling you why that's the higher thing to do, only that it is.
Yeah,
and that's the problem, right? Is like, you can't just make the statement that it is the higher virtue. You have to state why it's the higher virtue. And actually, I can help Matt's argument out a little bit here. The determination of men versus women's virtues. You can just look at it this way. It's really simple. If you key in the absence of a single virtue for an entire sex, and look at the kind of conceptual effects on society, which are detrimental, right? We can then associate which are masculine virtues and which are feminine virtues, and which are higher and which are lower. Here's an example of this. If men tomorrow, all of them, stop doing their job of defending the population, there's no population. It's gone. So idealism like courage as a virtue, things like this, have to be masculine, because if women give up on the duty of defending the nation, who gives a shit? It's not that important, right? Could it have a detrimental effect? Yes. But the way that you would associate that that's a masculine versus feminine virtue is look at the effects when one sex drops that virtue, and then you'll see why it's associated with one over the other. So the reason you should calibrate towards the higher virtues, these would be the things which would have the most compelling effect around everybody in society if you don't encompass them, would be these keynote masculine virtues. And that's why you should move towards them, because if everybody in society does, you're going to have a way better society. So you can't just make the assertion, but you can show why. We have good reasons for this.
Yeah.
That's definitely spot on. And it's people like, it's people out there who who tell men that they should go ahead, marry, and have children, have a family and stuff, and succeed and stuff, but they're not telling them how, as Andrew Wilson has directly stated here. Because of the fact of the matter is people like, Matt Walsh and stuff who tell people to go ahead and not, listen to the red pill movement and everything, and don't look at that ideology because it's selfish. And he's also spearing out with one example of one person and stuff. But at the same time, it's like there's a lot of men out there who are in the movement itself, who are possibly looking for one woman to be with only. And the thing is, they're getting advice from people like, Andrew Wilson of how to be that particular man, and as well as how to find that particular woman and stuff. The thing is, they don't like being talked down to and stuff. They don't like being told what they should do and not how they should do it. Okay. They want to know the ins and outs. So that way they'll know, what things they can do to succeed, as well as where they cannot fail and stuff. And if they do fail, they want to learn how to get back up, dust it off, and keep it pushing. Okay. So thanks to people like Andrew Wilson and stuff who actually bring up even more and stuff, things to, the argument to the table about how to actually go about with this particular ideology as well as movement. And also, thankfully, Andrew Wilson did correct the logic of Matt Walsh and stuff, where he actually shows that the problem within that particular movement with all the Matt Walshes, the Tommy Laurens, and even more and stuff, who say that, men should go ahead and find a wife, but not telling them how they should go ahead and find a wife. Men should be good husbands, but not how to be good husbands. So let me know your thoughts of this in the comments below on this video, with Andrew Wilson absolutely dismantling Matt Walsh and stuff with his foolish logic and stuff, and his fake and false assumptions. And Andrew Wilson has definitely exploded on Matt Walsh in a brutal rant where the viewers were shocked.